June 2018 webinar. Disclaimers: we are not attorneys. We are not offering legal advice. When you have legal questions, hire an attorney. This is the PI Education Monthly webinar for June 2018. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. Today, statements, lies, and videotapes, criminal defense. PI Education offers these monthly webinars every month on the fourth Thursday of the month. They're free, they're informative, they're a way for you to get to know us and us to get to know you. We're glad you're here. A little bit about the structure of this webinar. We'll take a break at about the halfway point to shamelessly plug some of our educational offerings. There's a promo code in it for you, so stay with us throughout the whole webinar. If you need to leave to take a call or any other reason, don't worry about missing anything. We keep the recorded webinar up here on our YouTube channel for you to come back to again and again. Oh yeah, go ahead and click on the subscribe button now, just underneath your screen there. It doesn't cost you anything. It helps us out a lot, and it keeps you informed of when we have new things on the YouTube channel. So click on that subscribe button for us. We would really appreciate it. I'm joined today by Frank Sellars from the law firm of Westfall Sellars in Fort Worth, Texas. Frank is a trial and appellate attorney. He focuses on representing citizens facing criminal investigations and prosecutions. Frank maintains an active criminal defense practice. Frank is skilled, he's knowledgeable, he's a good lawyer. Since beginning his practice, Frank has represented people charged with all types of offenses and from all professions and backgrounds. He's defended doctors, lawyers, even a district judge one time. He's won not guilty verdicts in cases ranging from DWI, and the DWI cases had both breath tests and blood tests, and he's gotten not guilty verdicts all the way up to murder cases. Frank frequently presents to criminal defense attorneys, prosecutors, and judges around the state of Texas about various criminal trial and appellate issues. Before opening his practice in Fort Worth, Frank was the president of the Lubbock Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. On a statewide level, he served on the board of directors for the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association since 2014. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest for the June 2018 PI Education webinar, Mr. Frank Sellars. Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I've got you muted.
All right. I feel like I already covered everything. I'm just happy to be here and answer whatever fireballs you throw my way.
Well, I hope we're not going to throw any fireballs your way. Full disclosure, Frank and I are friends. We've worked together for several years now. How many cases have we worked on together?
Not enough. Probably, what did you say, 20, 30?
20 or 30, something like that. It's a good number of cases. The reason I asked Frank to be on the webinar today is Frank's a young man. He is a crazy smart young man. And it's fun to work with intelligent lawyers who are aggressive and fight for their clients. And that's the reason I asked Frank to join us today. The fact I just like visiting with him. So Frank, I wanted to kind of get right out of the gate with, what do you, as an attorney, look for in a private investigator?
Oh, about 50 years old, gray beard, denim shirt. No. What do I look for? I look for somebody who is self-motivated among, probably first and foremost, self-motivated. You see a lot of private investigators who are former law enforcement, and I know we're going to talk about that, but former law enforcement and the extent of their investigation is, going to the door, knocking on the door, writing in a report, attempted to make contact, such and such, on this date and this date, and no answer, no response. You look for someone who's not going to come back to you empty-handed, that, when they hit a dead end, they're going to find another way to get the cheese out of the trap.
That makes sense. I put a note in the memo that I sent you this morning. I know you've worked with some exceptional investigators. Now you've worked with a lot of your what you call typical or standard investigators, people that just kind of do the work. What's the primary difference between those two, exceptional and typical?
Primary difference between exceptional and typical. Um, Gosh, an investigator that makes my job easier is an exceptional, or makes me a better lawyer is an exceptional investigator. A typical investigator is someone who actually causes you more heartache and more stress, where it takes away from the law practice from the lawyer's point of view. But an exceptional investigator is somebody who really just makes everybody look a whole lot better.
Okay. And I think that's important. There are a lot of people that are in the room today that are private investigators or that are interested in becoming private investigators. And a lot of investigators I've talked to across the country, they like to do surveillance work. They like to do domestic cases. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I have done that work before and I don't hate it. But there seems to be among the people that I've talked to, a little bit of trepidation about getting into criminal defense work because they feel like the stakes are too high. They're nervous about it. They don't know how things work. Um, are there any things that you would recommend to someone that wants to get into this business? How to approach doing criminal defense work?
How could you not want to be in when the stakes are high? I mean, you can go catch a cheating husband or spouse any day of the week, but it's not many days that, for us, we can say that we saved somebody's life, and or saved them from years upon years, in Texas at least, in a cage in a prison cell, unair conditioned, and eating grade F beef. How could you not want to participate in those high stakes?
I tend to agree with you. I've told this story a number of times, and Kim, I think, is probably sick of me telling it. But I used to work in a different business, a different kind of sector of the research world, and I got tired of what I like to call real estate based emergencies. And since being involved in criminal defense work, it feels like real work. It feels like we're doing something that matters to someone's life, and a lot of times it matters acutely.
I mean, you can count the number of people that we have saved from even just having the looming feeling of a felony indictment over your head for something that was clearly driven by poor police work and the motivation to charge and close a case, when all we had to do was go ask the right questions of those people, and by the end of it, they were wanting to sign statements and stay out of it, and people were not arrested and charged and indicted. And you've also seen it through to the end. I mean, that's why it's hard to say, because we've had quite a few where we've been able to head things off at the pass and get in early, which is very important, and start investigating things before people's memories sour. Before, I've been watching videos from a case this week that you and I are working on. You got to see some of these, Hal, by the way, where you can literally see a person give a version and a detective rephrase the version they gave and give it back to him. And before you know it, the version they gave first is nothing like the statement they gave and wrote and signed at the end. And so, when you make cases go away early, that's the best way. But you see them through to the very end, in a trial. I mean, there's no better high than standing next to somebody when a jury walks in with a piece of paper and they read off a not guilty verdict, and the person gets to walk out of the front doors of the courthouse not in handcuffs.
Yeah, it's a fantastic feeling. I think this work matters so much. I can't express it enough for the folks in the gallery. If you haven't thought about doing criminal defense work, if you're interested in it, I would strongly encourage you to, talk to criminal defense attorneys in your area, in your town. See if there's anything you can do to help them out. I know that the attorneys that I work with on a regular basis, they don't like to be pestered with what's the word I'm looking for, too many questions about how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? But what they love is when you come in and say, "Hey, can I take this off your plate and bring it back to you nice and neat and pretty? So, just talk to the lawyers that you know, talk to the lawyers in your area if you're interested in criminal defense, and check it out. It's fantastic work. The next thing I had on my notes, Frank, was we have in the private investigations world, there are a lot of specialties, and people can take seminars ranging from a 1 day to a 2 day to a 1 week seminar on specific topics. And I have seen on several occasions private investigators say that they're an expert in blood spatter analysis, voice stress analysis, handwriting, ballistics, crime scene photography, micro expression analysis, those kind of things. How important is it to you to have someone certified in these things as a private investigator?
Not important at all, because if I'm using a private investigator, they are part of the team. They know all the secrets. I'm never going to put, well, I say never, typically never going to put a private investigator on the witness stand, because I mean, they know all of the privileged and confidential communications between the client and the lawyer, all the stuff that, if you have a consulting expert who's not going to testify, who's never disclosed to the other side, they know all those things. And so, yeah, it's good to know a little about a lot, but keep it there. Know enough to know that there's a problem or there's an issue that somebody who is actually certified in that area can be hired to go and look at. To be able to look, it's important for an investigator and a lawyer to be able to look at photos and records and whatever the type of evidence is or whatever field of forensics it is, and be able to identify, hey, there's stuff here that I need to know more about, and we need to get to the bottom of it. But let a trained, certified professional do that. Don't try to be the DNA expert. Don't try to be the blood spatter expert. Don't try to be the arson expert. That's how you see a lot of people end up wrongly imprisoned, is because some police officer went to a weekend class in Florida, and all of a sudden they come back and they're an expert. In Texas, we had a case in the dog sniff scent of death. And they had this dog, and Fido, he could run around and he could just smell where death had been. And they actually convicted almost an entire family on this evidence. And so don't try to do that.
Right. In my notes, I mentioned that I might like to talk about one specific case where somebody had listed a bunch of areas of expertise. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Sure.
So for those of you in the gallery that have seen the Netflix show Making a Murderer, there's an investigator in that show who does a pretty horrible thing. He's talking to his client, and he presents his client, a young kid named Brennan Dassey, I think 16 or 17 years old at the time, really low IQ. The Supreme Court just made a ruling on or just avoided hearing that case, I think, this week. But the investigator goes in to interview his client, the guy he's working for, theoretically helping to defend. And he has a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, it says, "I am sorry for what I did. I am not sorry for what I did." Those are the only two options. We ended up working with this same investigator on a case. And at one point, and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember this properly. We were in the office talking about his resume, and he had listed on there that he was an expert in voice stress analysis and handwriting analysis and micro expressions and this and cell towers and all kinds of things. And I think one of us said, maybe you want to pare that down because you can't possibly be an expert in all those fields.
Yeah, something like that. And he was, hired in the Brendan Dassey case as an investigator.
Right.
And we hired him and he was referred to us as a cell tower expert. And I don't know. I mean, by the end of it, I think he was more hurtful than he was helpful.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but did the district attorney not have some fun at one point asking him, which one of these things pays the best?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he had listed so many things on his resume that he was an expert in. And my recollection is the district attorney had a lot of fun with that, saying,
What are you not an expert in?
So I guess the point I'm trying to make there for the folks in the room today is pick a thing, be good at that thing. As Frank said earlier, it's good to know a little bit about a lot of things. As an investigator, you need to be able to look at crime scene photos and kind of get a general idea of what happened. You need to be able to look at police reports and read through those and see if protocol is followed, all those things. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of details and evidence where you've got experts that know how to do that thing, let them do that. You do the investigative work. It does a couple things. Number one, it makes you a better investigator because you can focus on that and not worry about DNA evidence and how you're going to parse that because you're not really qualified to. And it lets you spend your time doing the things that the attorney needs from you. So I hesitate to bring that topic up, but I think it's one that people need to hear about. Moving on to law enforcement, I know that you have worked with, and it seems like sometimes that we pan former law enforcement in the PI trade, and I certainly do not feel like I don't intend to do that. I know that we had Brian Willingham on last month, and he had some things to say about former law enforcement, and I think some people were upset about that. But I know some folks that were in law enforcement that do PI work that are fantastic investigators.
As do I.
Yeah, tell me about some of those, Frank.
We interesting enough, there is an investigator in our conference room right now who's former law enforcement here locally, and a bunch of these guys who retired who do it the old school way where they sit down every morning and everybody talks about the cases they have going on and drink coffee and get ideas about leads and things to do, and they have guys, they're starting to slowly pull guys and build this agency here in Fort Worth. They have a former chief arson investigator, a former chief crimes against persons investigator, a former chief of this, and they're just kind of getting everybody who's retired and doesn't want to sit at home and just watch reruns of the Andy Griffith Show all day together to form this agency. And they're wonderful. They have done some really solid work for us. I work with another guy here locally who's former FBI and also a former sheriff's deputy, I believe. And gosh, he just gave me some deliverables last week, and kind of the reason I went with him was because he's a Spanish speaking investigator and how no hablo español. So we had to have somebody who could do that and translate. And he brought me 5 affidavits, all translated, all signed. I mean, he did some incredible work. And so I don't want to paint former law enforcement with the broad brush, or even law enforcement. I know a couple of detectives right now who I wish were not so good, and so there are some very good former law enforcement private investigators.
Do you mind to tell us the name of the firm that you're talking about there in Fort Worth?
Third Chair Forensics.
Third Chair Forensics. Now, I've met one of those guys, and super nice fella, and I know that you work with them on a fairly regular basis. That's the kind of private investigative firm that I like to brag on. Those guys do good work, and they're turning over good information for you.
Yeah, and they understand who they work for and what the goal is. The goal is, you can't look at everything in a vacuum. The goal, if you have an assignment to interview a witness, the goal is not just to interview that witness. From the lawyer's point of view, the goal is to develop strong evidence on certain points. And so when I start getting ready for trial, I look at here's what we can prove, here's what we can point out that they can't prove, and I sort of go subject by subject instead of witness by witness. And then I take the witness statements and say, okay, this person can help on this particular topic, this person can talk about this, and so on and so forth.
And That's an interesting point that you're making there about, you've got a process that you use. Another attorney might have a process that they use that is different from yours. I do things differently than a lot of investigators, and, other investigators do things differently from me. But when you're working with an investigator, as an attorney, I think it's helpful for the investigator to kind of know what it is you're looking for. So for the investigators out there that are listening in today, talk to your attorneys that you're working with and find out what they're looking for. Don't just go out and interview witnesses, like Frank said, in a vacuum. Find out what they're interested in. Find out kind of what their theory of the case is. Those kind of things, so you can pay better attention and have a head your head around where they need to go with it. Then when you're out there doing your interviews and your investigation, if you hear something that might fit in with what your attorney wants, you can dig a little deeper that way. I think that's a really important thing. We've got a question from the crowd here, Frank. Someone says, attorney-client privilege is paramount. What resources do you recommend for new criminal defense investigators to study? Those may be two different things, but what do you recommend new criminal defense investigators study?
I recommend for not only criminal defense investigators, but also every baby lawyer, defense lawyer, to read the American Bar Association's standards for criminal defense lawyers. And they're not long, but I was joking with a lawyer from Lubbock that I work with, who's an exceptional lawyer. And we were joking the other day. We said, if every lawyer would just do what's on the basic standard functions of a criminal defense lawyer according to the American Bar Association, there would be 95% less wrongful convictions.
That's interesting. And how long is the book? Just
it's not even a book. You can search, hit Command T on your computer right now, search ABA Standards for Criminal Justice. Function of there's a one for prosecutors and there's one for defense lawyers. If you have time, read both. If not, read the one for criminal defense lawyers, and that'll explain not only the attorney-client privilege stuff in an easy, digestible, understandable way, but also sort of what the duties of the lawyer are, which are many times, if not most times, passed off to an investigator.
Right. Okay. That's good. How many times do you find investigators running off down rabbit holes and bringing back information that you cannot use?
Only when I work with you. So this may come as a shock to you, Hal, but I'm kind of a control freak. And so I usually don't allow the investigator to go off on rabbit trails. Now, we know some lawyers who are, how would you say, less than control freaks, just because they have no idea what's going on in their cases. So, if you're working with a lawyer who doesn't keep enough control over your actions and just give you enough direction, let me put it that way, then you could find yourself running down some rabbit trails. But how would they, ever know?
Right. We've got another question from the gallery. Frank, how helpful is the private investigator with strong RICO and gang knowledge to a defense attorney?
With strong RICO, and well, obviously in a RICO or a gang case, that'd be extremely helpful. Well, if you're a former Crip or Blood and you've turned your life around and now you're a private investigator, I mean, I could see how that would be extremely helpful. Without getting killed, obviously.
Yeah. For the folks in the audience, and I'm assuming whoever asked the question has those areas of expertise. Working gang-related or RICO-related cases can be entertaining at best, confusing at the middle part and downright dangerous at the worst. So, Frank and I have had this conversation a couple of times. I'm willing to do a lot of things to help the attorney get the story and talk to witnesses and do those things. I'm not willing to get shot or stabbed. I've had a gun pointed at me a couple of times. Once on a case working with Frank's former law partner. Once on a case in Tennessee. It is unnerving to have a gun pointed in your face. In some of these gang cases, you can end up in situations where somebody ends up getting zippered, as they say. So got to be careful about those things. We've got another question coming in here.
Probably from the last guy who says Frank is an asshole. But I was just kidding about that. It can be extremely helpful if you have that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, no doubt. And for those of you guys that are in the room, you just got to know Frank is an asshole.
Published, right?
Yeah, totally. All right, I've got one here. I'm currently working on an associate's degree specific to private investigations. I'm currently seeking an externship. What would be the best approach in getting an externship with a law firm? Frank, any ideas there?
Go to the law firms that make the most money. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but go, seek out in Texas, it'd be the Norton Rose Fulbrights, it'd be the Baker Botts, it'd be even better, find the biggest, baddest plaintiff's lawyer in your area who does, everything from asbestos litigation to car wrecks to everything like that. I mean, if that is some really good experience and a good way to cut your teeth kind of while being paid nicely for it. Otherwise, figure out who the best criminal lawyers are in your area. I mean, it wouldn't be monetarily practical for us to take on an intern or an extern as an investigator. But some of these firms are willing to do that and they need the help.
I think, Frank, there may be a case when I started in the PI business, I went to another private investigator and basically said, I'll work for you for free for 2 months. Teach me what you know. And if a young, motivated person going for their associate's degree came to you and said, hey, I'm studying to be a private investigator, I'm working on my associate's degree, I'd like to come help out in your office. I'll do it for free X number of days a week or whatever. Would that be enticing?
You're hired.
Yeah. I think that's not a bad idea.
But let me add a caveat. Go into it realizing that you're still learning. And I see this a lot where investigators or, even worse, young, inexperienced lawyers try to, and I'm sure this has been me at some point, but they try to act like they know more than they do. And they try to talk over the senior lawyers, and they try to make their presence known more than it needs to be. Just realize this is a learning experience and try to soak it all in as opposed to sharing everything on your mind.
Yeah, and this is Lena Stevens that asked a question about getting an externship at a law firm. Lena, I would say also, when you're in school, I think pretty much any brand of school that you attend is a great way to get your head around some theories and some ideas. In the case of law school, it helps you think a different way. You study the law, but when you get your boots on the ground, or for someone like Frank, when you get your boots in the courtroom, school doesn't always help out that much. So the externship or the internship or the unpaid internship can be a really useful way to learn the business. I think that's a really good take on it, Frank. Let's see. Mary Martins says, making the transition from a law enforcement background to criminal defense mode has been uncomfortable and a bit fish out of water for me. Any suggestions? Mary, if you're still with us, I have a couple of questions for you. Number one, uncomfortable in what way? Is it just a difference of not having the support of the law enforcement community and, people answering the phones for you and getting a paycheck on a regular basis? Or is it uncomfortable from the sense of you're not comfortable working for the bad guys? So Frank, what would you suggest? I think I know what you're going to say here, but if someone is uncomfortable because they're used to working for the good guys and they feel like they're turning to the dark side, what would you say to that person?
We are the good guys, right? So you got to go back to our country's roots. Like, this is a free country because our founders were committing treason, right, when they were making the Bill of Rights and signing the Declaration of Independence. And we were founded by a country of outlaws, if you really sit back and think about it. And so we are the good guys, and the people should fear the government. The government should fear the people. The people should not fear the government. And so, it's not about whether you think somebody might be guilty or not guilty. Our system is set up on what can they prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And when you look at it through that lens and really sit back and say it's set up that way, it's set up to be difficult to convict somebody, regardless of what happens in your jurisdiction. I mean, I've practiced in jurisdictions where, the law and the facts be damned, jury was going to do what they wanted to do, whether it was for us or against us. But look at it through the lens of what are the weak elements in the case, and how is the government going to overcome this burden of proof that they have to rule out all the other logical possibilities of things that might be true.
Right. And there's also this, little known notion of the presumption of innocence. When we're accused of a crime, we have the presumption of innocence. We're not guilty yet. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. We're minus the yet.
Innocent unless found guilty.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So I did not mean to make light of your question, Mary. All right, here we go. Not really the switching sides thing so much as getting my head thinking in defense mode versus conviction mode. Okay, that's great. At the end of the day, my take on it is a trial ends up being a storytelling competition. You've got a prosecutor who's going to take a set of facts and craft a narrative and tell his side of the story. You've got a criminal defense attorney who's going to take a set of facts and craft a narrative to tell his side of the story. Those stories may go like this. They may be completely different stories. Sometimes you've got really, really bad facts that you can't overcome, but usually there's something you can work with. So, in the defense mode, it's just a matter of taking the information that you have, interviewing witnesses, and helping the lawyer come up with the story. Frank, do you want to add to that? Because I think I prattled on a bit.
I think my first answer kind of answers the question.
Okay.
Sit back and look at what are the weak points in their proof, and are there, even if the stories are almost identical, are there things within that story that make it such that they can't rule out other possibilities that might be true? And when that happens, that's reasonable doubt.
Right. Okay. We are at the halfway mark for the webinar today. We've got a lot of questions rolling. This is fantastic. So this is the June 2018 PI Education webinar. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by Frank Sellars of Westfall Sellars over in Fort Worth, Texas. Frank is a good friend and a person with whom I've worked on several occasions. I enjoy working with Frank. He's a smart young attorney, and he is an aggressive attorney, and he fights for his clients. Here at PI Education, we do just that. We provide continuing education for private investigators. If you have not been to our education website, it's pieducation.com. Check it out. I promised you guys a promo code for the day, and the promo code today is statements 18, STATEMENTS 18, all lowercase. If you use the statements 18, promo code, you will get 15% off any class you want to take at pieducation.com. That offer is good until 7/5 of next week. So it ends next Friday or Thursday. It ends next Thursday. If you need to get some continuing education, if you found some topics on our education platform that you're interested in, now would be a good time to do it. 15% off of all classes between now and next Thursday. So I see that Frank is back in the room with us. Welcome back, Frank.
Sorry, the lights turned off on their own.
It happens. Did you have to like wave your hands like this to get them turned back on?
I had to roll around in my chair, not on my. Yeah. Anyway.
So I've got a couple of interesting questions here. RICO, Lena, Mary. Elizabeth asks, what tips can you give to an expert witness in sexual assault of a child cases from your perspective? I'm assuming that's for you, Frank.
Expert witnesses in sexual assault of a child cases. Can you clarify what type of expert witness? Are we talking about like a child memory expert, or are we talking about a SANE nurse, a sexual assault nurse examiner?
Elizabeth, if you're still with us, just, yeah, if you can clarify that, just give us a little bit more of kind of what kind of expert you're talking about. I think Frank will have a good take on this. He's worked on some of those cases, and he's worked with those experts. So I think he can do it. All right, so here we go. Frank, you're going to love this one. Scott Walker asks, do lawyers see value in PIs with extensive experience in investigations involving social media? If so, what, if any, concerns would you have, i.e. evidence preservation or hearsay?
Okay, let me first start with evidence preservation. I don't think there's really that much concern with evidence preservation. In Texas, for example, it's as simple as if you take a screenshot of something somebody posted on social media, and you can what they call authenticate it and overcome hearsay, then it's in. And those are very low thresholds. So in terms of, in the courtroom, let's say Hal posted on, or let's say that, yeah, let's say Kim posted on her Facebook that the PI education webinar sucks, and Hal screenshots it and brings it to me, and I've got Kim's picture with Kim's writing, and that certainly sounds like something Kim would say if we bring Kim to court, or if we bring Hal to court. We can authenticate it by Hal saying, yes, I'm familiar with Kim. Yes, I'm familiar with her Facebook. And yes, this appears to be something she would have posted. That's authentication. And all authentication means is this thing is what the proponent or the person offering the evidence claims it to be. That's all authentication is. This thing is what they say it is. Because you got to remember, we have court reporters in a courtroom for a reason, and they're taking down everything. And so they can't see what the picture or the evidence is necessarily. And so you got to have somebody up there to say, yeah, that's the thing that we're talking about. And it's real, it's authentic. The second part is hearsay. For the most part, the courts right now are letting in all kinds of stuff that should be hearsay. I mean, from text messages to social media to this, that, and the other. Most times what we find in this field is people get on Facebook. I did a speech on social media last week, and I opened with this story from Florida where these kids went and robbed their Uber driver, stole his car, stole his cash, stole his watch. And the title of the story was because people do dumb shit on Facebook, which is shockingly true. And so it's usually, those are sort of self-authenticating things. Like you have a picture that somebody posted, that's just a photograph. Is that person in the picture who the proponent claims that it is? And that's a picture is not hearsay. The post that Kim says that, that's not hearsay because it's a present sense impression, or It's her mental state at the time. It's what she believes at the time that she wrote it. And so authentication and hearsay are not issues. Here's one thing that all PIs, all lawyers, everybody needs to be aware of. Well, two things. Number one is it is unethical in every state to go create a fake Facebook account, start friending people and gathering evidence through social media on a fake social media account, fake email account, fake phone number, text messages, whatever it is. That is totally unethical. So be careful about doing that. The second, and that's the most important, the second and still important is don't ever advise people to delete stuff from their social media. Don't ever advise people not to turn stuff over. I know in a lot of states, they have what they call reciprocal discovery, where if the state, like in a civil case, is the plaintiff will request evidence from the defendant, and there's a case out of Virginia actually where the plaintiffs, it's an interesting case if we have time. This guy was in a car accident. He and his wife were driving their car down the highway, got into a catastrophic accident with an 18-wheeler. And the wife ended up dead and the husband ended up single. And so he, grieving his wife, is out all over social media, drinking, partying, wearing T-shirts that say "I love hot moms," and just and they're suing, right, for loss of emotional support, loss of consortium, all these things that it seems like he was finding at these parties. And so the plaintiff's lawyer tells the client, "Hey, get rid of that Facebook stuff. Delete it. Don't give that to me. I don't want to have to turn that over." And so they didn't. He deleted it all. They didn't turn it over. They go through the whole trial, and they win a $5 million verdict for this guy who lost his wife. Turns out they figured out that they didn't turn over all the social media stuff. The judge reversed that $5 million award. And then on top of that, ordered the plaintiff's lawyer to pay $500,000 in damages for all the research they had to do to figure out the little cheating scheme by not turning over the Facebook. So be careful telling anyone to delete stuff from their Facebook.
And I think it's probably important to point out, as private investigators, when you're working for an attorney, Frank, tell me what the term is. Am I an agent for you? Am I acting at your behest? Is that the right way to say it?
I mean, there's a better way, but it's probably not appropriate for this audience. Yes, you are my agent. You are a part of the defense team.
Okay. So as an agent for the attorney, the things you do, they fall on the attorney. They're the ones that have like, if you're going to create a fake Facebook account, think about it this way. You're not doing it just yourself and providing information to the lawyer. You're doing it to the lawyer. You've basically made him violate his ethics, and that's not acceptable. That doesn't do anybody any good. So be really careful about how you approach getting information. I talked to a brand new investigator one time on a case that we were working on, and he said, I can sneak into this place and pretend to be somebody else and find out what they have to say. And I'm like, I don't think I would do that. I'm painfully honest with people when I approach them to talk to them. I tell them who I am. I'm very clear about I'm Hal Humphreys. I'm a private investigator, or I'm an investigator working for the defense attorneys of this person. I make that as clear as I can. And if I think the person for any second thinks that I'm police, I will say, I want to be clear. I'm not with the police. I'm an investigator working with the defense. You got to do these things as a defense investigator. You can't lead people to think something that's not true. There's some discussion on here about what's truth and what's not, and what's fact and what's not. And I think I had a really good example one time about the difference between truth and fact. And Frank, have you heard the story about the snake?
Start telling it, and I think I might.
Lawyer out of Waco and I are sitting in the backyard at his client's house, and a snake falls on the ground among the three of us. And we all, being strong and powerful men, screamed like little children, ran inside the house. The guy's mom says, "What happened?" And I think the lawyer said, "It was a snake." And she says, "What kind was it?" And I said, "I don't know. It was green." And the client said, "No, no, no, it was brown." And the lawyer said, "No, no, it was black." The fact is, a snake fell on the ground. My truth
Right.
is it was green. The lawyer's truth is it was black, and so forth. So, I mean, facts are facts. Truth is interpretable. It is personal. It is something that you believe. So I like to be real careful talking about, this is truth. We deal in facts. That's our stock and trade is facts. So I'll get off my soapbox about truth versus fact. Elizabeth Calkins says, "I'm certified human sexuality educator and a Title IX investigator with foster care and mental health background, BA in psychology, forensic interviewer. I'm a baby expert witness. Only testified in one case and worked on several others that never went to trial. Having you ask me to clarify actually helps me. I need a better answer to this." So that's the girl that was asking about tips for experts in sexual assault on a child.
And say that again. What kind of expert?
So she
Title
is,
IX. I got that.
yeah, Title IX, foster care and mental health background. Hang on, I've got to scroll up here like this. Certified human sexuality educator. So she's forensic interviewer. So I'm guessing she's doing, forensic interviews, memory reconstruction, that kind of thing.
Gosh, I don't have the book here with me. Well, it's on the bookshelf. You need to have handy and take to court with you a copy of the book, Jeopardy in the Courtroom. You need to know that book inside and out. If you're doing like Title IX investigations on behalf of universities or educational institutions or whatever it may be, it's you're dealing with people that their memories are firm. But if the more I work with memory investigators, and I work with a fantastic one who's the chair of the Texas Council on Sex Offender Treatment, and gosh, every time I work with him, it makes me realize that everything I remember is bullshit. I mean, it's kind of like your truth is truth and facts are fact story. I mean, if you are a fan of Malcolm Gladwell and his podcast Revisionist History, there was a really fantastic episode called Free Brian Williams, and it talks about how people's memories are just basically mush, and you might have a general idea and a general sense of what happened, but as time goes on, that just changes over time. And so that Jeopardy in the Courtroom book is a really helpful resource that every expert that I've worked with in Texas is well familiar with, and it just kind of teaches you how a wrongful conviction could happen. Goes to the McMartin school cases in California, and how just in the way you handle and respond and question a child, you can implant a memory that's just completely false in their heads, and juries understand that too. But as far as expert witness tips, just briefly, stick to what you know, stick to the question asked, and on cross-examination, if you can answer yes or no, answer yes or no, and that's it.
I think Dan Hurley, one of my dearest friends and former law partner of Frank Sellars, Dan still works down in Lubbock, Texas. Amazing attorney, lovely human being. He says a good witness helps the jury understand things. A bad witness tries to confuse things. So, as an expert, try to help people understand things. I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and even if you are a hired hand, you have to concede the things that have to be conceded, and you can't, the best examples I have are experts for the state who are paid by the state, and they work in laboratories that are funded by the state, and they're, everything they do is for the government. And they get up there and they go beyond their expertise because they've been to weekend classes. They become advocates for the state, essentially. And in your job, the best experts that I see are not advocates, and they give where, I'm sitting over there cringing, gosh, why did he have to give that? And it's like, yeah, he did have to give that. And it makes everybody more credible, because all you have in the courtroom is your credibility. And if you're an expert witness for one side or the other, the lawyer's credibility depends on your credibility, and vice versa. And so you don't want to work for lawyers who are going to go and stretch the truth and put words in your mouth and that kind of stuff, or ask you to do things that are unethical. And the flip side is true too.
Right. And Elizabeth, I would also say, the little bit of expert witness work that I do is in a very narrow field of expertise. And I do work for the state of Tennessee. I do work for defense attorneys in that same area of expertise as an expert. What that does is, I can't, if a prosecutor cross-examines me, or a plaintiff's lawyer cross-examines me and says, don't you, Mr. Humphreys, always work for the defense? I can say honestly, no, I don't. I work for the state of Tennessee when they're looking at prosecuting cases in this one area. Be fair, the appearance of a hired gun can hurt you. Now we all got to get paid to pay the bills. We're doing, as my wife likes to say, this purple leather ain't gonna pay for itself. We got to earn, but spread that work out on both sides of the fence when you can. If you're doing expert work, it makes you appear more credible. That's my opinion. So, Frank, do you have experience in working with those who have provided analysis of written statement, also known as statement analysis, to measure a statement's veracity? You ever worked with anyone doing statement analysis?
Just myself.
Okay. I know there's a guy over in North Carolina, a fantastic guy named Don Rabin, who teaches statement analysis. He's written a couple of books on it. He's a really good interviewer. I cannot remember. It may be Don Rabin, Statement Analysis, maybe the title of the book. I don't have that book here, but I will post it here on the YouTube channel as a resource when we get this recorded version up. It's a fantastic book. But I've not worked with statement analysis folks directly. Frank, you haven't either?
I haven't either. And, my practice really started after the times when statements were just written. And, now for the most part, the big cases that I have, most things are recorded. And I love watching or reading transcripts of actual recorded interviews, because investigators can't help but give their thoughts and impressions, and that is just a really fruitful area of cross-examination when you have a police officer or a detective on the stand.
Right.
I'm looking for this quote. Remember that quote I sent you the other day about the duty of a defense lawyer is not to the truth?
I don't remember that.
I'll find it.
Okay. Scott Walker asked, do you see social media being used more in court? I think the answer is definitely yes. And I believe it'll be used more than any other type of documentary evidence in the near future. What do you think, Frank?
More than any other type. I don't know that I'll go that far, but yeah, I think it's becoming a primary source of evidence in cases. That's for sure.
Okay. Let's see. Oak Investigative Services ask, what is the preferred way for a private investigator to market their services to attorneys? Emails, cold calling, unannounced visits at the law firm offices? What works?
Act like you have a trip planned to the office of the lawyer that you want to work with. Take them out, get them drunk, be entertaining. This is just from personal experience, but really, there are books on the subject, but the best way in a service type of profession or service field, do your service for free. Show the value that you can add to somebody's practice by just saying, "Hey, new investigator. I'm trying to get some work. I'd like to offer to help you on a case for free." And it sucks to have to tap into your savings, but in the end, if gosh, how many people have we recommended you to? I stopped recommending you to people because I don't want you to be too busy. I'm just looking out for you.
I do appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. And I know this is hotly debated on some Facebook groups for investigators. Some of the folks that have been around a little bit longer say, "I would never give my work away for free. I'm worth more than that." Here's the deal. Sometimes you give it up for free and you get paid back in spades down the road. The anecdote Frank was talking about, where you act like you have a trip where you're going to go visit in the town where the lawyer you want to work with lives. That gambit cost me several $1,000s, but it has netted me two really good friendships and a decent amount of my income over the past several years. I like the low and slow method for marketing. Get to know somebody, build a relationship, do that thing. I think emails a lot of times get ignored. Another good thing to do is if you can get a referral to an attorney that you want to work with. If he gets a call from a fellow attorney or another investigator that he works with saying, "Hey, you might want to check this guy out," he's more likely to take your call or read your email or read your letter. So those are good things. And I really appreciate the question from Oak Investigations, because our Oak Investigative Services, because a lot of times those of us who have been in the business for a little bit don't think about how do you get your foot in the door. And it's an important thing to think about if you're just getting into the business. Frank, I do want to go back. We mentioned very early on in our conversation today the importance of getting in early. When would you suggest someone start investigating in a criminal case?
As soon as you get the first call. I mean, if you can be there when the police are there, do it. There's one of the most famous lawyers in Texas history. His named Percy Foreman, and legend has it that Percy, on more than one occasion, answered the door for the police when they arrived at his client's home to investigate his clients for murder, and invited the detectives in. And so if you can get there that early and you can be there to see the scene, untapped, untouched, that's the best way to do it.
And that doesn't happen that often. We just don't get the opportunity. I mean, a lot of the cases I take here in Tennessee are appointed cases, and by the time they hire the lawyers, it's sometimes 6 or 8 months later. By the time they hire the investigator, it's sometimes 6 to 12 months later. I mean, it can be a year or two later. I just picked up a case the other day where the young lady's been in jail for 18 months. And we're just now starting to investigate. The police have done their work, and I mean, that makes our job a little bit easier. But if you can get in early, I've worked on a couple of cases where we had one in specific. We had a young man that was being investigated for murder. And Dan Hurley, Frank's law partner back in the day, called me up and goes, "Hal, I need you out here on Thursday." And the event happened on Saturday. So we were out there within the week of the thing happening, and I was able to get literally just video from the surrounding businesses that showed the actual incident, and it showed it to be not what the district attorney thought it was. And we ended up getting, did they no bill that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So getting in early can make a huge difference in your life and the client's life. And if you have the chance to do that, do it. Frank, we have run all the way through 1 full hour. I really appreciate you being here. I promise everybody that we'll cut this right at 1 hour, so we're getting right there. For the folks in the crowd, thank you so much for joining us today. We are tickled that you're here. Thanks also for the amazing questions. I'm thrilled with the questions today. I had really good questions from the crowd. Promo code that we promised you earlier, again, is Statements18. all lowercase. It gets you 15% off any course you want to take at pieducation.com. I'm Hal Humphreys. This is the end of the June webinar for 2018. Frank, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.